After this.
That Corbin and Corbett legal team fighting for the rights of the people. That father-daughter team investing in the youth when the system ain't treating them equal. Providing truth for our people, we able to reach them. So anytime you get accused for a crime and Lord knows you ain't do it, we here to get you through it. Exemplifying prudence and glorifying God, making sure you're compensated for other people's doings. Our vision is to be one of the best. We're small enough to focus on your matter throughout the neighborhoods of Dallas. Working constantly and making sure your rights are protected. A firm team of lawyers, aggressive, effective. A team that has your back in the courtroom. Two well-spoken black lawyers in the courtroom. Investing time and resources when it's evident that you were treated wrong. Now you walking out of Dallas courtroom with a settlement. Corbin and Corbett, the father-daughter legal tag team that has your back in the courtroom. Our purpose is simple. To obtain a favorable outcome for each client and glorify Christ in all we do. Our vision is to be one of the best and most...
Hey guys, what's up? This is attorney Chloe Corbett, aka the Duchess of Justice, and with me I have
Attorney Augustus Corbett, aka the Minister of Justice.
We are the Defiant Lawyers. We provide legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to empower you to defy this unjust legal system. Before we get into today's topic, why don't you go ahead and hit that like button? It'll take a second. It doesn't cost you nothing. Just like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and share this video with your family and friends so that they too can become a part of this amazing community, the Legal Rebel community. With that, Dad, what's up? Happy Saturday. How's it going?
Happy Saturday to you as well. It is going very well. It's been a few days since we've been on the air, but I am always excited when we sit down and educate, inform, empower, equip our legal rebel audience. So, it's a great day.
It is. Happy 2022, everyone. I think I haven't been up here since last year, which is kind of crazy to say. So I'm so happy. I hope that all of you all had an amazing new year. But we're going to get into a few trending topics and serious topics today. And the first of which is, what grade does Joe Biden deserve after his first year in office as president of the United States?
Well, I got a little graphic here that we're going to play, so you can talk over it. All right.
I am of the opinion that he deserves an F. I believe that the Biden presidency so far, after 1 year of him being president, he deserves an F for the accomplishments or the lack of accomplishments that his presidency has brought forth. First and foremost, I think we should start with the failed voting rights bill that didn't pass the United States Senate over the last couple of days, the day after Martin Luther King, after we celebrated Reverend Martin Luther King. And look, we knew that this was coming. This has been projected for several months. Senators Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema have talked for months how they would not support any changes to the filibuster, which would be needed because no Republicans were in favor of the voting rights bill that the Democrats have had drafted and were attempting to pass in legislation. And the only way to get this voting right bills passed without zero support from Republicans was to change the filibuster rule so that just a simple majority would be needed to pass this legislation versus the 60 votes that would be needed under the current filibuster rules to pass it. And they came out, month after month after month, giving speeches, giving television interviews, telling why they would not support a needed change to the filibuster so that voting rights legislation could be passed in this country to protect you and our rights. And because they as anticipated, it did not change, this voting right bill basically died. And it was one of the major tenets of President then candidate Joe Biden's candidacy that he ran on, along with student loan debt and COVID-19. And so with the failure for this bill to be passed, is one of the major reasons why I believe that his presidency deserves an F. What is your opinion, Dad?
Well. Woo. Man. So A, B, C, D, E, or F.
Yeah.
All right. So we're talking about for the first year, right? So we're not talking about the whole presidency yet, because he has at least 3 more years. God forbid anything happened to him physically, but assuming that he gets through all 4 years, and I mean, there's no reason to believe he won't. What would the grade be for this first year? Mm-hmm. This first year, I would have to give him an F as well, Chloe, for this first year. As you pointed out, most African-American people especially, voted for Biden pardon me, I said Biden. I meant Biden. They voted for him large. Now, that wasn't the only reason, though. The other reason is because of his support, his very strong support. No, there is that issue of him not getting those things done. And not only that, those voting bills, but we're also going to talk later about police reform. And so since he hasn't gotten those things done, I have to agree with you. I'll just have to give him an F at this point.
Yeah. So I want to go into more detail about the John Lewis voting advancement bill, or the voting rights bill as is known by most people, and why we believe that it failed, and what can be done going forward. Now, a lot of people, you hear in the news, when you hear any newscasters talk about this bill, you hear the word filibuster, filibuster, filibuster. Well, what is it? What is a filibuster? And basically what the filibuster is a rule in the Senate to where senators can debate on a topic for as long as they want. And they can debate without having any voting done on the particular topic that they're debating about. And this has been around since, the 1800s. It was a rule that was not originally imagined by the founding fathers when they created the Senate and the Constitution. It was a rule that came about years later with various presidents in the 1800s. And basically what the rule says now is to end, these hour or day long debates by various senators. To end this filibuster, you have to have a 60 you have to have at least 60 senators vote to end the debate and to vote on the topic. And when this rule was contemplated back in the 1800s, it was, well, we didn't want, one group who had a majority in the Senate to be able to just monopoly whatever topics they had. So let's get a super majority. Let's get a rule where, in order to end the debates on these topics, we need at least 60 senators to vote on it. But as you've seen, it has been in modern times used as the way to stop legislation that the other party doesn't like. And that is what the Republicans have done with this voting rights bill over the last few days. We know that they didn't have the 60 votes that was required by the current filibuster rules, because there were no Republicans who supported it. So in order to get the simple majority, they needed at least Manchin and Sinema to vote along. The Democrats needed Manchin and Sinema to vote along with them in order to get this passed. But because Manchin and Sinema have refused to agree to making small changes to this filibuster rule, that's why the voting rights legislation didn't get passed. And to me, it doesn't make any sense to me why Sinema and why Manchin are so gung-ho against not making small changes to the filibuster to protect people's, United States citizens voting in America. Well, we know why it is, because we know that they're backed by corporations and, they have huge Republican donors. But what are your thoughts on this filibuster and in relation to the voting rights legislation, Dad?
Well, I agree. I agree that, first of all, a little history here. The voting rights bill was passed because the 15th Amendment, which protects or which gave the right to vote to blacks who had been enslaved. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment gave us citizenship, due process, and equal protection rights. And the 15th Amendment stated that no one should abridge our right to vote, the newly freed enslaved people. But the 15th Amendment alone had no teeth. So in order to give it teeth, because when it was passed in the 1860s, 1866, 67, originally, I can't remember, somewhere in there, for the next 100 years, white society did everything it could to prevent blacks from voting, with a whole lot of voter suppression. Such things as how many jelly beans in a bar in that bottle of jelly beans, how many bubbles in a bar of soap, grandfather clause. If your grandfather hadn't been able to vote, which obviously the enslaved people, their grandfathers couldn't vote, then you couldn't vote. Poll taxes, all sorts of things, violence, terrorism, all sorts of things were used to prevent blacks from voting despite the 15th Amendment. So to remedy that, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act. And essentially what it did was it said all those southern states that were notorious, infamous for their voter suppression, they had to get pre-approval from the Department of Justice before they could implement any new law affecting voting. And that was the law of the land from 1965 until 2013, when the U.S. Supreme Court essentially gutted portions of the Voting Rights Act and did so again, did damage to the Voting Rights Act once again just last year in another case, 2021. Excuse me, the first case was Shelby County versus Holder, and the second case was Brnovich versus the Democratic National Convention. Both cases, both U.S. Supreme Court cases, did considerable damage to the Voting Rights Act. The first case was written by John Roberts, who opened the door to all kinds of voter suppression. And the second case was written by Sam Alito, who came and put, the sort of the finishing nails in the coffin of the Voting Rights Act. And to show you how effective those court cases were in affecting voting rights, the day after the court handed down the Shelby County case, Texas and North Carolina passed very restrictive voting suppression laws the next day. And other states followed suit. And so there are some 20, 30 states now that have passed restrictive voter suppression laws, again, based on the 2013 case and the 2021 case, and because of the big lie that Trump keeps telling about this voter fraud. So states across the country have passed these so-called election integrity, voter integrity, election integrity statutes that just make it much, much, much more difficult for African Americans to vote. We saw even in the 2020 election, we saw African Americans, no one else, but Black Americans in Black neighborhoods standing in line for 8 hours to vote. Whereas in the white community, they could be in and out in 10 or 15 minutes. But in our community, in the Black community, and see, they know with these voter suppression laws, they know exactly, Chloe, how to make it difficult for Black voters, because we have certain voting patterns. We have certain voting habits. A lot of Blacks vote after church on Sunday. So they got away with, they did away with Sunday voting in a lot of precincts, a lot of jurisdictions. They know that Blacks tend to vote early. They did away with a lot of the early voting. During the pandemic, a lot of people voted by mail-in ballots. Got rid of a lot of that. And then on top of that, there's this thing called racial gerrymandering. And that is where the GOP legislatures across the country created or recreated voting maps that weakened congressional districts that were heavily favored toward Black voters. So they would try to put all the Black voters in these in one or so voting map or voting district so that the Black vote was concentrated there and was not able to really, it wasn't influential in a majority of the states. North Carolina did that. Texas did that. Texas is doing it now, actually. So between voter suppression, between damage to the Voting Rights Act, between racial gerrymandering, all of these efforts are intended to take us back to a Jim Crow era. This is Jim Crow, what somebody call Jim Crow 2.0. And so the thing to protect Black voters from those voter suppression efforts are those two bills. The John Lewis Voting Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. The Freedom to Vote Act would undo a lot of the stuff that these states have done over the past year or so, or past few years. And the John Lewis bill would restore critical provisions of the Voting Rights Act. But as you so eloquently explained about the filibuster, you got all 50, the Senate right now is 50-50. One tie vote by Vice President Kamala Harris can tilt things one way or another. And usually that would be good enough to get these bills passed. But because, as you explained, the filibuster rule is being used by the GOP senators to halt the voting on these bills, there are not enough Democrats to overcome, as you pointed out. There are not enough Republicans to give the Democrats the 60 votes they need to overcome the filibuster. And as you again explained, if Sinema and Manchin would vote with the Democrats to at least amend the filibuster rule, then they could still get these bills passed. But those two senators, and here's what they did. Here's a game they play. They actually, when the Senate voted for this the day after Martin Luther King's birthday, they actually voted yes. Sinema and Manchin voted yes to pass the John Lewis bill and the Freedom to Vote bill. They voted yes. So the Democrats actually had the 50 votes to pass that, and Kamala would have been the one who would have given them a majority. But they voted with the Republicans not to amend the filibuster rule. So games, and you pointed it out correctly by saying that it's because they're in the pockets of corporate donors. I mean, that's what it's about. They are being basically bribed. Mm-hmm. And they may as well just go ahead and declare themselves Republicans, in my opinion. Stop playing games.
Yeah, just come out with it. If you taking the money from them, come out and declare what you are, because that's essentially what you're doing. And so you're saying that you support, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, protecting voting rights in this country. You're doing nothing procedurally to get it done. So obviously the money that you're getting, the bribes that you're taking, is more important to you than, Black and brown voters, making sure that their voting rights are protected. So, and some people may be thinking, well, why are you giving Biden an F? He's not in the Senate. Why are you giving him an F for the voting rights bill not passing? Because the buck stops with him. He is the head of this country as president. He is the leader of the Democratic Party. He is the one, he and his team are the one who, needs to be in the background pushing the senators to do the right thing. Everything stops with him. And, and then when he comes out, he gave a press conference, talking about his 1 year, going over what he believes his achievements are, answering questions. He comes out and says, and I paraphrase, basically, it was unexpected that my Republican friends would not work with us to try to make progress. How is it unexpected? You were vice president for the first Black president in this country. You saw what your Republican friends did to him to stop him from passing legislation. You saw what your Republican friends did to him with the Affordable Care Act, with Obamacare. You saw that how they treated him firsthand. You were second in line under the first Black president. Yet you come out and say that you're surprised that this is the way they're acting now? Come on, Joe. Come on, Joe. Now, to me, that tells me kind of what his true heart is. To me, he wasn't fighting enough behind the scenes to push senators in his own party and even Republicans to get this passed, to amend the filibuster. Because in his mind, well, they're my friends. I've been in the Senate 40, 50 years. I've been in DC for all of these years. They're going to do what my agenda, to try to make my agenda be successful because I'm a white man. But that's not the case. You saw what they did to Barack Obama, and then you say that you're surprised at the way the Republicans are acting. That doesn't make any sense. And Joe has been in DC in politics for 50 plus years. He is not as ignorant as he's appearing to be. I think that this is some type of, I don't know how to describe it, because there's no way that you could be surprised at the way the Republicans are acting after serving under Barack Obama. So because the buck stops with him, because so many black people supported his presidency, because because of black people in South Carolina, he's basically the president now. And the fact that under his administration, the voting rights bill failed. Yeah. We gotta give you credit for that, Joe. And that's one of the reasons why you get an F. There's another reason as well. There's another bill that passed the United States House of Representatives, but not the Senate. And that is the George Floyd Policing Act. So let's talk about police reform. This is another reason why we are giving Joe an F for his first year in office as president. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act.
Yes. I ditto your comments, Chloe. The buck does stop with Joe. It is the reason why he is president. A lot of, we had George Floyd had been lynched. When was that? That was in 2020, right? Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot going on, a lot of injustice in our faces. And people were wanting to get somebody in office, get Trump out of office, first of all, get that crowd out of office, and get somebody in office who was going to take, social justice, racial justice seriously. And so folks literally went and stood in lines for 8, 9, 10 hours. By the way, let me say welcome to A Chief for being with us. Also, welcome to Tina Anderson for being with us as well. Thank you all for joining the show and the discussion.
Thank you for joining.
So there was a lot of angst around social justice, and it even appeared in some circles like there was sort of a racial reckoning going on, because so many folks hit the streets and made their voices known after watching Mr. Floyd get lynched like that on TV. So Joe came in with great promise. And my main reason for supporting Joe, because I disagree with Joe on other issues, but my main reason for supporting Joe was because of police reform, the George Floyd bill, and the John Lewis voting rights bill. I mean, I wanted him, Chloe, to put those two pieces of legislation at the top of his agenda. And I wanted those two pieces of legislation, getting those two pieces of legislation passed, to be his top priority out the gate. I wanted him to work on those things the first 100 days of his administration. Because we know that a president usually has his or her most, notice I said her, right?
One day, soon.
I'm kind of looking forward to a female president. I think
let's change something up. These men, y'all had y'all time. It's time to get some new blood in there.
I agree. So, so I wanted, because the president has a certain amount of time to get things done. Yeah. Remember Obama, he spent all his political capital in getting Obamacare enacted. After that, he was pretty much couldn't do much of anything else. Mm-hmm. Joe, instead of and this is why I give him an F. When I think about it, I give him an F-, because he prioritized the Build Back Better program that he was trying to get through, the bill. He prioritized that over voting and police reform. Mm-hmm. And those were not the reasons why we voted Joe. The Build Back Better program, I think it's, some people have very fond things to say about it, and some folks don't like it, okay? My focus is voting and police reform. I think Build Back Better has some good things to it, but it should have been second. Joe didn't put us at the top of his priority list like we did him and it very well may now cost him and the Democrats because they didn't follow through.
Yeah.
They didn't follow through. And so you, me, and everybody else were fighting and talking till we were, out of breath, trying to get disillusioned African Americans to the polls. Go vote, go vote, go vote, go vote. Vote, 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 vote Trump out, vote Biden in, vote, 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 vote. And many of them didn't want to vote in the first place because they don't see the connection between voting oftentimes and them trying to put food on the table. And we explained to them, yes, no, there is a connection. Elections have consequences. And I believe that got a lot of folks out to the polls. And then in Georgia, they win a second time. And what has it gotten us? That's what is going to be, the question is nothing thus far. And that's what is going to be, that's what's going to make it hard to get folks back out to the polls this year, 2022. All right? And you couple that apathy that I believe is coming and is already there actually, couple that with the voter suppression measures that the GOP was able to get in, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for social justice, racial justice, etc.
It doesn't. And even during his latest press conference a few days ago, he was asked about the Build Back Better plan. And he said their plan going forward is to try to get, small provisions passed of that spending bill, try to break it up into chunks. So he's still not giving up on the Build Back Better plan, which is cool. He wanted to, build our economy back after COVID-19 and this pandemic. But where is the same fire? Where is the same fire for the voting rights and police reform that have basically gone dead in the water as well? I did read where Joe Manchin has said that he would vote for some type of reform to the electoral count in regards to the voting rights legislation. But to me, that's nowhere near enough to, what would have been passed with the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
That's just a Band-Aid
Yeah.
on a cancer.
Yeah. Yep. And another reason, before we move on, I give Joe Biden an F is his student loan debt. I'm not going to let off of him. He campaigned on he was going to forgive $10,000 in student loan debt for people in this country, and that's a lot of money for a lot of people, especially for a lot of millennials. It's nowhere near enough. I think that all student loans need to be canceled, but he campaigned on at least canceling $10,000. What's happened with that? Absolutely nothing. He's basically all but said that that's not going to happen. The only thing that I've seen done is that there's still a pause in student loan repayments being due until I think May of this year. But again, that was another campaign promise that he campaigned on that I believe got a lot of millennials, got a lot of people my age and younger, voting for him for presidency, and nothing has happened with that. So again, I have to give him an F. Now, what are some of his accomplishments? Let's try to be, I guess, balanced to Joe.
Well, before you go there, we didn't say very much about the police reform bill that hasn't been passed either. Okay, yeah. We gave Joe a black eye, figuratively, with respect to the voting. Now let's blacken the other eye. Okay. Figuratively.
Figuratively.
In case the Secret Service is listening or the FBI.
Yeah.
Right. Figuratively, rhetorically, proverbially, okay? Tongue in cheek, okay? We wish no harm whatsoever to the president. Not at all. So we're just having a little fun. But no, I think his failure to get the police reform bill passed as well was also a huge failure. There are so many provisions in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that we need badly. You and I know this firsthand as lawyers who represent people who have been victims of police brutality, excessive force, and the biggie that the Justice and Policing Act would have done, the biggie is it would have abolished qualified immunity. That is a doctrine that essentially protects police officers from civil liability. And when you are, when you know you got immunity, there is no incentive for you to behave. There's no incentive for you to follow policy. When you know you have built-in immunity, there's no incentive for you to take, especially the lives of people who have been so maligned in this country, normally African-American men, but not just black men, black women as well. So not getting that passed is a huge failure as well. And there are other provisions. I like the provision in the George Floyd Policing Act that would have required police departments to report police in police shootings. Right now, they don't have to do it. It's not required, and many don't. In fact, I read recently that the FBI is about to close the program down where police departments can report to them. Claude, there are about 19,000 different police departments in this country. And we really don't know how bad police shootings are because they are not required to report that data. Mm-hmm. They can voluntarily do it, but recently I read the FBI said, we're going to close the program down because there are not enough police departments that are participating. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act would have required police departments to report that so that we could really see how bad that really is. And I believe it's much worse than what we realize.
I agree.
So that is another huge failure on the Biden administration. Now, before we leave and go to the next topic, you were just talking about student loans. Where is the voice? Where's the energy? Where's the passion of the first African-American female vice president? Now, we know she can't get out ahead of the president. We know she serves, essentially, she serves the country by serving the president. We know that vice presidents don't want to be seen as sort of outdoing or outstepping the president or, again, getting out in front of them. I get that. But I sure hope that behind closed doors, she is raising Cain about getting these bills passed. I sure hope that. It doesn't seem like she is, doesn't feel like she is, but I give her, again, some leeway here because, again, I understand that she can't just outdo and get out in front of the president. But I hope that something is going on behind the scenes to prod him, to push him to get these things done. And lastly, when you talk about voting, you're talking about our democracy. Donald Trump is out there spreading the biggest lie about the weakness of our election system. We have the strongest and most honorable election system in the world. We are the number one democracy, or at least we used to be before he got in office. And so when he and the GOP follows his lead and attacks voting the way they are doing, they are really weakening not only black voting rights, but our democracy generally.
Yeah. And I want to go back to the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. I'm glad you redirected us back there. I want to read some of the provisions that act would have enacted. It would have granted power to, and I'm going to read this, to the Justice Department Civil Rights Division to issue subpoenas to police departments as part of, quote, a pattern or practice, whether there has been a pattern and practice of bias or misconduct by the department. So the Justice Department would have been able to issue subpoenas to police departments about whether there has been a pattern or practice of bias or misconduct by that department. It would have established, and this is to your point, Dad, a federal registry of police misconduct complaints and disciplinary actions. Like you said, there's over 19,000 police departments in this country. We don't know how much police brutality and deadly force cases there are. That bill would have established a federal registry of those misconducts. It would have required federal uniformed police officers to wear body-worn cameras. Now we know, various police departments throughout the country, they have started equipping their police officers with body-worn cameras, but this would have required all federal officers to wear those body-worn cameras. It would have required marked federal police vehicles to be equipped with dashboard cameras. Again, various police departments have started doing that, but it would have required all federal police officers to have those dashboard cameras. It would have prohibited federal police officers from using chokeholds or carotid holds, which led to the death of Eric Garner. So it would have completely prohibited that. It would have prohibited the issuance of no-knock warrants, which is what led to Breonna Taylor's death down in Georgia. So it would have prohibited the issuance of no-knock warrants, which are warrants that allow police officers to conduct a raid on someone's home without knocking or announcing themselves. Okay? It would have mandated that federal officers can only use deadly force only as a last resort, and that de-escalation be attempted, and it would have conditioned federal funding of law enforcement agencies on the adoption of the policy. And there's so much more. This was a completely expensive bill that would have changed a lot of the terrible, horrible practices that a lot of police departments and federal law enforcement agencies have done for hundreds of years in this country. And yet again, just like you said, just like with the Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, it passed the United States House of Representatives and it stalled in the U.S. Senate. And that's because these senators, these politicians, these people who are elected to represent their constituents, they don't care about their black and brown constituents. Because if they did, every single senator, in my opinion, should support this. Whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, you should support, the fact that the government cannot put your constituent in a chokehold without probable cause for no reason at all. You should support that there should be a registry of police misconduct cases. But for a lot of politicians in Congress in DC, they care more about their donors than their actual constituents. So again, we can't let Joe Biden off the hook. Because of that failure, that's another reason why we give him an F for his presidency.
Yes, ma'am. You laid it out well. Thank you for reading those provisions of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And I want to say this too. There are likely some Democrats who hear us giving Joe Biden an F. And they're like, what are you folks doing? Are you people Republicans giving Joe Biden an F? And I'll speak for me. Chloe is an adult. She can speak for herself. But no, I am not a Republican. Nor am I a Democrat. I supported Joe Biden. I supported Barack Obama before him. And I just want to see racial justice, social justice, and I consider that to be a very important priority for this nation. So the person or party that prioritizes social and racial justice, I'm going to ride with them. And so I don't care who it is, though, if they don't prioritize social and racial justice, I will critique them. I will criticize them. And that's what we're doing. There's something more important than party affiliation and partisanship here. This is voting rights for African Americans. This is reform of the police system that is notoriously violent toward the black community, generally. Not all police officers, but generally. And so when we do what we did to get a president elected and he doesn't prioritize our priorities, I'll give him a failing grade. I don't care what his party is, quite frankly. Now, that's me. I'm talking for me. Chloe?
I consider myself a rational progressive. I hold both parties to the fire. I believe both parties have failings. I believe a lot of politicians are there to enhance and enrich their own lives. So I have critiques for both parties. I wish we had more than a two-party system. There are other democracies where you can choose, one of 10, one of 15 parties. I think the two-party system needs to be reformed a lot. I believe that because of this two-party system, the parties, it becomes like almost your identity. And my identity is not being a Democrat or a Republican. That's not how I value myself. That's not how I value my life. Neither one of those parties define who I am as a human being, as a citizen.
I like the way you said that, Chloe. Whatever party you support becomes your identity. That is a powerful way to look at it. You become a Democrat. You become a Republican. And in many regards, that is more important than you being a woman, a man, black, Christian, whatever. That sort of tops the list for a lot of people. That's a very interesting way to look at it. Thanks for making that observation. By the way, Alicia says, hey, everyone. Sorry she's late.
Hey, girl. Thank you for hopping on. So, yeah, it may sound like because we're so critical of Joe Biden and the Democrats that we're, Republicans. We criticize Trump and Mitch McConnell and other Republicans. We are just for the truth and for racial justice. And just like my dad said, whoever, man, woman, Democrat, Republican, blue, orange, whoever stands against racial justice and racial truth, we
stand for it. I think you mean stand for it. You said stand against it.
Yeah, whoever is for racial justice, we stand with, and whoever is against it, we stand against. I hope that makes sense. But y'all know what I'm saying.
We know what
if y'all don't support racial justice, we ain't with you. We ain't on your team.
We're not riding with you.
We're not riding with you. So that's why we can be critical of President Biden. I don't hate President Biden at all. I think he's a good man. I just don't think that his first year in office has been that effective. I think he could have been a lot better, and I think he should have come out the gate like you said, Dad, within the first 90 days, pushing these issues, pushing. Instead, he was pushing other things. So yes, we give Biden an F for his first year. This is a new year. This is 2022. People can learn from their mistakes. There is a midterm election that's coming up. So I do think the Democrats, they need to get together, get their leadership together, and figure out what is an effective message. And more importantly, how can we get these policies passed to positively affect people's lives?
Well, let's, before we go further, let's play the graphic about Biden. And I would like to hear what the listeners think. What grade would they give Biden right after this? What do you think Biden should get? A, B, C, D, or F? Chloe and I are F. In fact, I went a little deeper. I went F minus.
F minus.
After I started thinking about, the fact that he did not prioritize these things, and all the black folks who stood out in the voting lines, sometimes 8 hour. I remember that I believe it was maybe a Thursday or something in Georgia. People were literally in line for 8 hours to vote. Mm. And so folks did that, and he did not prioritize our issues. Now, maybe I'll take the minus back. In fact, I may even do an F plus. Is there such a thing?
I don't think so. Would you give him a D? Is
that where you're leaning? A D minus.
Okay.
Here's why I say that. Okay, so here's why I say that. I just saw this comment by A Chief. We'll go to A Chief's comment in just a second. But here's why I say that. I say that because he did nominate the first black female vice president. Okay. First black Secretary of Defense. I believe, and this is really, really important to me, I believe if given the chance, he would nominate the first black female Supreme Court justice. I believe. He has said that. Okay? He has put, or is trying to put, 2 African Americans on the Federal Reserve. Let me see. Who am I missing? What am I missing?
His judiciary picks for federal judge appointments.
Oh, key. Thank you. Absolutely. He has made a tremendous amount of African American judiciary picks for the judiciary bench, for the federal bench. So all right. So for me, that'll probably get him out of the F range, D minus. So. And there are other key appointments too that I think let me see, someone in his economic department is an African American woman. So he has put a lot of blacks in key places, and so that'll get him out of the F range for me.
That's very important to me as well. He did get the infrastructure bill passed as well. I'm gonna give him a D. A D.
Okay.
I'm gonna give him a D.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna give him a solid D.
A solid, not a D minus.
I'll just keep it even, just a solid D.
Solid D. Okay.
Because getting those African American judges and just diverse type of judges on the federal bench is so important. So important. We're litigating federal cases now, and the judges who are on the bench are very important. So I think that I think that is enough to take him out of the F range. But he's still very below average, very very below average, and close to failing. But I think just to be even, I will give him a D. That's my final grade for Joe Biden's first year in office as president.
Okay, hey Chief, you guys called it F for failure to deliver on his word. Yes. If a person is their word, I mean that's all you are. And if he didn't deliver like he promised to on his word, yes, he deserves an well. We both now have picked it up a little bit. I'm at a D minus. And Chloe is now at a D when we start thinking about the fact that he has made some history here with African-American voters and so forth. But maybe he just didn't understand the priority that we place on voting and police reform. I mean, voting, John Lewis said it was almost sacred, our voting rights. I agree with him on that.
Yep.
Because so many other things flow from our ability to vote. So, but, okay, he's not, we wouldn't give him a complete failure grade, the F, but he will get a D minus from me, D from Chloe. But we want to hear from you all. So, hey, Chief, that's our response. Yes, he got an F for failure to deliver on his word.
I think he's failing, but you know how teachers give a curve in the class? I think the curve adjusts up with the black judiciary and the other things he's done. I'll give him an F.
Well, Gwen Pigeon, first of all, welcome, Miss Pigeon. Thanks for tuning in. She says something very interesting, Chloe. She says, I thank you for being reasonable. Mm-hmm. I'm giving Biden an A for only one reason. He's not Donald John Trump. You know what? Since you said that and reminded me of that, Miss Pigeon, I'm going to go from a D minus to a D. Matter of fact, if you put it that way, then he might be an A. He may be an A plus when you put it that way. Okay.
She said she's a registered Republican since 1978.
And she's a registered Republican.
Wow.
Okay, look at that. So here's a Republican that obviously didn't care anything for Donald John Trump. Yeah. So, Gwen, I think for putting it in that perspective, you probably helped Biden get a little bit more from us.
H. Chief said, OMG, Mr. Corbett, LOL. I mean, Gwen, she brings up a good point. When you're comparing him to, in my opinion, the worst president in history, Donald J. Trump, I mean, he is looking like a little bit of maybe a B or an A. But on his own actual accomplishments, I still got to stick with the D.
Thanks for putting it. Thanks for saying it that way, Chloe. That's exactly. If you grade him in comparison to what we just got rid of, oh my God, is there something better than an A? I mean, but then on accomplishments, on his failure to get some key things done, I'll stick with the D. So maybe we should have done this, had categories. In comparison to Trump, he's an A plus 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 plus. Yeah. In terms of what he was able to get done, the first, and by the way, everybody, this could change. This is just for the first year.
This is just the first year.
Just the first year. This is not, what we're probably say year two. Hopefully we won't be able to say this year 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if he'll run for re-election or whether he'll win, but maybe we should have done it in categories. So we categorize our grading. In comparison to DJT, he's an A plus, all the pluses you can put there. In terms of what he has accomplished thus far, a D.
Yeah. And he did enter office right after an insurrection, right after domestic terrorists tried to bring down our democracy, and in the middle of a pandemic to the likes of which we haven't seen in modern times. So we do. To me, that adds a little bit to his curve as well.
Okay, now you gonna talk us back up to because that's true. I mean, I read today they're like three-quarters of the country now have had at least one dose of the shot, and he's now sending out masks, the N95 mask. He is getting the testing thing straightened out. So he's doing some things on that level. So all right, okay, from a D- to a D.
Yeah.
Okay.
You see what Charles Langford said?
Yes, Mr. Langford. He has two problems. Sinema and Manchin are blocking him at every step. Grade C. Very good observation, Mr. Langford. They are the problem with getting these things passed. You know, and that's a fair observation. Let me say this, and then I'll let Chloe respond to Mr. Langford's point, because he makes a great point. You know, why are we judging Biden so harshly when the problem is Sinema and Manchin? Now, Chloe, you already addressed this. You said earlier the buck stops with Biden. Okay? Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And I think, you know, in my mind, I can see these presidents like, for example, Lyndon Johnson. Okay, I'm old school, so I can go way back, and I remember how Lyndon Johnson was able to get in would have been the 60s, was able to get 3 huge, historic civil rights bills passed during a time when Dixiecrats controlled a big portion of Congress. But he strong-willed them. He strong-armed them.
He was ruthless.
He was ruthless with those politicians.
Yeah.
And of course, he did have Martin Luther King in the streets, making it happen or forcing him to do these things. So shout out to Dr. King and the civil rights movement. And that's another issue, right? That's a great issue, Chloe, because look at how the streets were filled with all kinds of people when George Floyd was lynched. Compare that to no one in the streets now, no one pushing voting rights. And you could, with all due respect to Mr. Floyd's life, and, you know, I choke up just thinking about the way he died, but you could make the argument that voting rights and police reform and so forth, getting these bills passed, is even more critical than the protest that folks did for Mr. Floyd. God bless him, and may he rest in peace. And I don't mean to diminish what happened to him at all. And it's because of what happened to him that the police reform bill should be done and the voting rights bill. So, yeah, I mean, I get it, Mr. Langford. Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin have been blocking Joe, but we just expect Joe to figure it out. I remember, Chloe, you saw the movie Lincoln, right? Mm-hmm. And you remember how the scene, Daniel Day, I mean, he just captured Lincoln. I mean, he just captured the man. And I remember one scene where they were trying to get the 13th Amendment passed, and they were having problems with several congressmen. And he slammed his hand on the desk and he says, "I am the president of the United States of America, and I have been endued with considerable power, and you will get me these 2 votes."
Yeah.
I remember that scene like I just saw it. So I don't know if that's just for the movies or what, but we expect Joe to use his power to get Sinema and Manchin or some Republicans or whatever on board and get these things done.
Yeah. We need, and to Mr. Langford's point, Sinema and Manchin are blocking him at every step. I think they need to be investigated for, you know, the money they're getting from their donors. Any potential conflicts of interest. I think Manchin had an investigation on with his daughter or something in relation to.
I just want to say thank you, Mr. Langford, for that comment. I'm sorry, Chloe.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the next step is to have them investigated. Let's look into where this money is coming from, because it doesn't make any sense. You claim to be a part of the Democratic Party, but you're not following the leader. And then mom said, "Hey mom," she said, "Yes, babe." But America wasn't about to become a white minority by 2045. The change in demographics got the majority very, very fearful, angry, and desperate to hold on to power. I mean, that's just it.
Okay, your
That's
mom
just it.
did what she does. She brought it home for us.
She brought it home. She brought it home
and made it real.
Yeah. That's where the fear is coming from. So, and to mom's point, we don't want to let the Republicans off either, because no Republican voted for the voting rights legislation in the United States Senate. None. And it's common knowledge that the more people vote, the more fearful a lot of Republicans become that they will start to lose power. So it is truly a power play, like mom said. It's a fear play as well, because as America continues to become more and more diverse, there could be a white minority, and that's why so many GOP-led states as well have put intense voter restriction laws in place, even at the state level.
There will be a white minority.
Yeah,
that is where we're headed. Your mom is absolutely correct that is the thing that fears them, that scares them the most. That's why I'm taking my country back and making America great again, and there, that's why there's fear about immigrants, because it all has to do with changing demographics. The fact that whites will be a minority in a country that they think is theirs, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, that's something we can dive into. Does anyone else have any grades? How would you all grade Biden's first year in office? And while we're waiting on that, let me give a shout out to my godson, DeJuan, or DJ. He's watching this. He's a young black male child who we're teaching about his history and about voting. So I'm so very glad that his mom texted me and told me that he's watching this video so he can learn about this at a very young age. So what's up, D?
Welcome, DJ, and excited that you are, by the way, DJ is very special to our family, and he graces the cover of a book that I wrote, Education and Justice, and he's a handsome little fella, smart little dude, and he's going places. And in fact, shout his mother out. She's just something. I mean, I've been knowing DJ's mother now for 12, 13, 14 years.
Yes.
And she's a single mother. And I seen her as a single mother go from struggling in high school to, as a single mother now, struggling through high school as a single mother to becoming a college graduate and then becoming a master's level graduate. And God knows where else she's going to go, maybe PhD or whatever. So
I'm declaring PhD. She's already
a PhD. So I mean, I just shout her out. That's grit. That's determination. So Alicia, again, congratulations. Keep up the great work. You're setting a great example for DJ and for young African-American women, everywhere. So keep it going.
Yes, keep it up. And she works with young at-risk children, so they're able to hear her story, and she inspires them every single day. Every single day. Every single day.
Great. And that does say something wonderful about the country, right? I mean, it's in America that you can,
Yeah.
you know, go from a struggling high school student to a master's level person who's now giving back to the community and PhD soon to be, and so on. And that's my story, by the way. I'm a high school dropout.
Mm-hmm.
Dropped out of high school, never made it beyond the 10th grade, and was able, by God's grace, to become a licensed attorney, a minister. So there is still some magic in this country. We just want that magic to be available to everybody.
Oh, you said it so right, Dad.
Yes, we want those opportunities to exist for everybody and for everyone to be able to take advantage of those opportunities.
Take advantage of the American dream.
That's it.
That's what we want.
All right, so Mr. Langford said his money is coming from coal and oil. Yes, Joe Manchin. They control him. Yep. And Sinema's money is coming from Big Pharma. No question about it. In fact, there's an article recently regarding Sinema that says that she was voted to try and get to get prescription drug costs down. But she abandoned that principle, that goal. And that's why a lot of Democrats voted for her. But she abandoned that goal after a big pharmaceutical company donated almost $1 million to her campaign.
Mm.
Now that's just flat out bribery.
I mean,
and
so bold with it.
And sellout. I mean, what? I mean, really. So, yeah. Thank you.
I read an article that Mom sent that the Arizona Democratic Party Exec Board censures Senator Kristen Sinema. So she's been censored by the Arizona Democratic Party. Quote, they say, while we take no pleasure in this announcement, the ADP Executive Board has decided to formally censure Senator Sinema as a result of her failure to do whatever it takes to ensure the health of our democracy. So she's already seeing the results of her decisions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, now, Mr. Langford, I think, is continuing to drive home the point that there are forces that are out of Biden's control that, has him kind of stuck. Well, my thing is, again, I heard somebody say recently, and I so agree with it, that the GOP takes an axe and fight against voting rights while the Democrats use a butter knife. I'll say it again. The GOP uses an axe, a machete, a sword, a cannon to fight against voting rights while the Democrats show up with a butter knife and a pop pistol. Okay? So they need to toughen up and get this thing done, Mr. Langford.
Yeah.
And your mom says here that the Supreme Court ruled that all dark money can remain in politics, which is another huge issue. And it goes to Mr. Langford's point that I forgot the name of the case. It was handed down while Obama was president. And it really, 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 really contaminated politics in this country because it basically gave the corporations the deciding, influence or power with their money. And, just regular people donating $5, $10, $15, $20, $30, $40, $50 were drowned out by the $2,500 and the $2,000 and the $20,000 contributions that corporations are able to make. I remember Mitt Romney infamously said corporations are individuals. They are people, and they are not people. I understand what he was saying legally, but they are not people.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. And, with Nancy Pelosi coming out and really not condemning, people, members of Congress being able to do stock trading with insider information, because it's been well documented and reported that her husband is very into trading stocks and may have used some sort of, is alleged, may use some sort of insider trading. And new Senator John Ossoff out of Georgia, he drafted a bill that would go pretty far in stopping members of Congress from using insider trading when it comes to stocks and enriching themselves. So even the Democrats, just like we've seen with Sinema and Manchin, they have their advantages in all of the dark money that they're using as well, which is probably why they're not coming so hard against Sinema and Manchin as well, because it's like, okay, are they going to start investigating me and my donors and where my money's coming from? So.
Okay, well, we're coming to a close, Chloe.
Yes.
It's been 1:50. It's been an hour and 15 minutes. I've really enjoyed this, as well as the feedback from all of the audience here. But all good things must come to an end.
We'll be back next Saturday.
Yes.
We'll be back next Saturday to talk about that week's trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture. It's been so amazing to interact with our legal rebels and the followers of our channels. Stay tuned. We have some big interviews coming up. We have some new content that we're going to be putting out. With that's been fun. I hope you all continue to have an amazing 2022. And we cannot wait to be back with you next Saturday.
All right. Bye-bye.
Peace.